Got it. Wow, welcome. Welcome everyone who is live on this call. If you're on the Zoom call, I'll take your questions afterwards at the end of the chat. And if you're watching live on Facebook, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you wouldn't mind turning that down, thank you, darling. These teachings that we do on Mondays are some of my favorite things to just like pour into, because there is so much that we can collectively unravel in terms of the metaphysical and energetic laws associated with being an enlightened and ascending human being on this collective journey. So it's the metaphysical and energetic laws that we're really interested in understanding how we navigate. That's our mastery, but also to remain receptive and open infinitely to the mystery. That's our faith. So your job as an ascending master or as an awakened apostle on this beautiful earth, birthing the kingdom of possibility, your job is to hold an equal balance of surrender to the faith, surrender to the mystery, and mastery over your experience and sovereign within your mental, vibrational, and behavioral worlds. So what we've been doing these last, well, I could say maybe 3 or 4 months, is we've been going deeper into what those levels of mastery are and what they look like. In particular, we've talked about the veiled obstructions, those mindset glitches that prevent us from being fully present to possibility, to quantum possibility. And we've talked about the ways that we can identify and transcend those. And so many of our students and clients are reporting wild amounts of creative energy being liberated from those stuck systems and now needing somewhere to go. So that's why we decided to put on this new series, which is called Miracles. Now, for 3 weeks in a row, we're diving into miracles, into what are miracles? Are they real? How do they work? What is the natural and supernatural explanations for how some of these wild and unexpected impossibilities that can actually become actualized through a framework of consciousness? So really, we're talking about miracles, not so much as far as I don't know, sunrise is a miracle, but we're talking about that transcendent experience of miraculous phenomena. That's what we're talking about in this series. Now, when we say miracle, what comes to mind usually is one of 2 things. Number one, the sort of life is a miracle mindset. I'm going to draw this so we have a visual representation. Everybody likes visual clues. We are talking about, number one, life is a miracle mindset, right? Where your prehension is attuned to receive in wonderful awe all of the marvels of the natural beauty and glorious symphony of unfolding occurrences. Where you've actually trained your mindset to, by default, see and spot perfect miracle. Like the human body is a miracle, right? The sunrise is a miracle, the night sky, the dewdrop on the tip of the leaf, these things are a miracle, you know. And one of my favorite stories from my life is when my husband, who's on the call today, hello, darling, when my husband took Olivia, our oldest daughter, to preschool, well, now a million years ago now, 6 years ago or so, 8 years ago, brought her to preschool and was standing there in the car park with all of these parents hustling and bustling and kerfuffling and arguing and talking about how incredibly busy they were and how dreadfully busy they were going to continue to be for the rest of the day. And as he's standing there with Olivia and talking to one of these parents, they're chatting about, she's lamenting, right? She's lamenting over this terrible meeting that's coming up and how extremely difficult it's going to be. And in the middle of that conversation, a golden hawk takes off from a tree over there, swoops in between them, and they're standing no more than 3 or 4 feet apart, swoops in between them, wings blazing gold behind him, and lands on a basketball hoop no more than 10 yards away. And Matt and Olivia go, "Wow, did you see that?" And the woman goes, "What?" She missed it. She
Jag behöver sova lite mer ikväll då.
Utterly missed out. Pop you on mute. Thank you, love. She missed the miracle. Why? Because her prehension was not attuned to the miracle. Her prehension was attuned to the suffering. One of the things that I learned very early on in miracle work, in my training in miracle work, was when I had the amazing honor of meeting Piers Anthony, who's a 21 times best-selling author of fantasy books, right? So he's attuned to the fantastical. And I asked him, what is the key, right? What's the key to this incredible success that you've experienced in your life? And he looks at me very sternly and very pointedly, and he says, Elizabeth, the key to success is luck. Ah, no, I wanted you to give me the code, the real code. But he did. He said, the key to success is luck. And what is luck if not that God drop of unexpected possibility? Well, he told me that, and I started examining luck. I started examining the metaphysics and the energetics of luck. And isn't the conclusion that in order to be able to pick up a lucky penny off the street, you first have to spot it, right? You have to be attuned to spotting that lucky penny. So that's what we're talking about when we speak about miracle mindset, right? And in some ways, there are two planes of universe to consider when we're talking about miracle work. And the first is that one, is that horizontal line, which is like the plane, your plane of existence. Where is your game board? What life are you living? What is your prehension attuned to? What do your coordinates of consciousness add up to in terms of the creative vibrational possibility that you're in accord with, that you're making agreement with? Now, remember, I'm not speaking to beginners here. I'm speaking to those of you who are acutely in tune with your knowing that you are more than the physicality of your experience. You're the one I'm talking to here. So you need to have an awareness of where your points of consciousness are in order for you to be able to attune them so that you can ascend in your experience of knowing. And that ascension is what lifts this plane of existence. It lifts it out of the energy fields of system, of what's possible in the world, and into the energy fields of grace, of possibility, of quantum, of that which is not yet formed, coming into form. And so that's the horizontal plane, right? That's that part of it. And we dealt with that last week in some detail, which means now we have to look at the other plane. We have to look at the vertical plane. Now, the vertical plane is not about your mastery at all. This is the vertical plane here. If this plane, if the horizontal plane is where is your mindset attuned, and are you able to spot the golden hawk? Are you able to spot the lucky penny and pick it up? Are you able to see all things as a budding miracle? Then, in other words, the vertical.
Men du får inte klättra i den. Har du lagt den?
Pop you on mute. Thank you. Stay on mute, please. If the horizontal plane is your mindset, your landscape, then the vertical plane is that unexpected quantum drop. It's the God drop. It's that sudden, unexpected, mind-blowing occurrence that changes the course of everything. And so since this kind of miracle is utterly mysterious, it cannot be justified or rationalized with psychology or phenomenology or even any sort of theology, really. It cannot be explained. Even by metaphysical law, it cannot be explained because it defies the laws of energetics. It's got nothing to do with the law of attraction. It's got nothing to do with the law of cause and effect. It's got nothing to do with karma. It is utterly surprising, right? So that means that if we're going to attempt to adjust our ability to receive a miracle based on our knowing that this is a quantum mystery, this is something that has absolutely nothing to do with your mastery, it means that the only way that we can develop our ability to receive a miracle is to look at the quantum mechanics of allowing. Because here, if this is a God drop that has nothing to do with where you are on your scale of consciousness, in other words, even if your mindset drops all the way down and this cross becomes inverted and you find yourself living in the depths of darkness, right? Even in this plane of existence, the God drop is possible, because that God drop is always possible, because that particular aspect of miracle work is utterly quantum, which means it lives in a super potentiality state in possibility. And your only way of relating to it is to be attuned to the mechanics of allowing it to be so. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. The God drop, the utter unexpected, mind-blowing happening, the gift from God that changes everything, the unforgivable forgiven, the sick healed, the debt released, the dead raised. That's the sort of miracle that is available when you're not in that high vibing, high resolution mindset, right? When you're not walking around going, look at the hawk, isn't it lovely? When you're thoroughly broken, when you're on your knees at a brick wall and there's nothing you can do. This is a sort of miracle that's available despite you being a vibrational non-match, right? When you're not in vibrational accord with it, it can still happen for you. So it's your knowing that is the key to activating the miracle, and it's your surrender that's key to allowing it come into form. Remember, consciousness always precedes energy, and energy always precedes matter. You understand that? Consciousness always precedes energy, and energy always precedes matter. So your surrendering to what has not yet formed is key to allowing it move through energy and into form. Like the time, for example, where my husband and I were living in a barn. We had lost everything. We had lost all our opportunities. We'd lost our income. We had absolutely no credit, and we had nowhere to go. And winter was coming, and we needed somewhere to sleep. So we lived for a little bit in a dilapidated barn structure with our two little children aged 2 and 6. And one night in particular, I'll never forget this one night. Now, let me just paint a picture for you here. The barn doors were held together with a bungee rope. That was the only thing separating us from the prowling and marauding bears and mountain lions that lived in those mountains. All the windows had cracks in them. The roof was unstable. And when this storm moved through the mountains, the whole building shook and trembled, and we could hear it creaking. And I remember my husband would sleep in his bed at night with this big knife at his side, just in case one of the bears did get through. And the little children were wrapped up in these blankets because it was really cold there in Colorado where we lived. And this storm had moved through, and it was pounding us with such ferocity. And we could feel the whole structure moving as the children lay there sleeping. And in that moment, I knew that even if we survived that night, we survived the storm of that night, the frost would be shortly after. Very soon it would be frozen and icy. And I had absolutely no out. I had no way out. There was nothing that I could see. There was nothing in my calendar. There were no meetings scheduled. There were no leads. There were no clients. There was nothing. And that night, I howled silently, energetically, and I know you know what I mean when I say that. I howled and said, sort this out. Fix this. Save me. I know you know that feeling of having fallen to your knees. Perhaps you were in the shower. Perhaps you had mascara running down your face, and you're just at the end of possibility. You were at the cliff's edge, and you knew that the bears were coming. I know you know that feeling of that deep and profound agony, that energetic claim to say, I give up. I am done with this. As that rock bottom surrender that releases all creative control over resolution and opens you wide open for miraculous outcome. That's why rock bottom is such an effective place to be. That's why they say when you get to rock bottom, you discover that God is the rock. Well, a couple of days after that night happened, wouldn't you know, but I was teaching a workshop in a local church. I was teaching a workshop on mysticism and effective prayer. And a beautiful woman in the back of the class who had never met before puts her hand up and says, I really need someone to stay in my cabin over winter. And we went to look at this cabin, and my goodness, it was a mansion on 180 acres of unspoiled Rocky Mountain splendor. And we stayed there for 7 months. She let us stay in this beautiful home throughout the winter. We were completely unaffected by all those horrors, by all those terrible possibilities that were literally licking our face just moments ago in the barn. All of a sudden, the entire problem had been resolved as a result of that rock bottom surrender. I'm going to show you something lovely, really, really lovely, lovely stuff. That's what my mum says. She goes, lovely stuff. Now, we agree, right? You and I agree that on a quantum level, on a microcosmic level, we're all made of the same thing. We come from the same place. We are tapped into the same source and the same supply. We're made of the same substance. We all agree on that, yes? Hands up if you're on the live call. Hands up if you agree. Good. Good. It's fairly unanimous. Yeah, we've got thumbs up. Great. Everyone agrees that we're all made of the same thing, and we're going to say that that same thing is this plane here, which I'm going to call source, like so. Oops, that's not very visible, is it? And we're going to say that if this source is all things, then it's a very specific part of all things that is, in fact, the you thing, which is you. So this infinite pool of never-ending creative power is always channeling into an individuated strand of divinity that is you. So here's your consciousness right here, and your consciousness is like a framework. It's like a sequence of specific coordinates of rules and facts that you live by that make up the way that this creative power is shaped. And it moves through you vibrationally, through your cellular consciousness, and out into the world of form, out into the collective. And by the law of attraction and multiple other mechanics of spiritual creation, your life arranges itself to match these coordinates. And that means that you see a manifest result that matches the creative declarations that you make about what is possible for you. Right, so that's why when we're talking about the horizontal plane, when we're talking about this particular plane here of miracle work, what we're talking about is actually making sure that these coordinates of consciousness are thus attuned that you can prehend a vibrational universe of miraculous outcome. But the God drop is different. The vertical line doesn't require you to be in any kind of specific state of mind at all. It just requires you not to be negating the possibility that this creative power can move through you and bring something to form from outside your universe of possibility. Yes? Good. Everyone understands that with perfect clarity. And if not, put your hands up and I'll repeat it. Ooh, I've got hearts. I've got nods. Good. Everybody on the call is happy with that. So bear that in mind. Hold this in your memory now, right? We understand this. So this is source and this is life. Right, I'm just going to put that in. And this is your manifest life. Yep. This is your consciousness. This is your subconscious, superconscious, and conscious framework. This is your field of vibration. And this is your manifest, prehended, actualized experience. Hooray, everybody gets it. Now, at rock bottom, what happens is that you release all creative control over what outcome is here. In other words, your awareness moves from being inside this, usually we're living inside this dome here. This is sort of this is the dome we live inside. We're not usually with our eyes on the Lord. We're usually with our eyes on the trappings of the world and the feedback systems that we fall into in terms of what we're creating, what's manifesting, and how we're responding back in turn to that. So usually we're living inside of here. But at rock bottom, what happens is that our awareness sort of goes into poise. Our awareness, we let go of all of the creativity, we let go of all of the creation, and we say, I'm done. I'm utterly done. Do with me what you will, Lord. Have your way with me. I surrender. I surrender. That's what happens at rock bottom. So when we've then released our control over this creative power flows much more freely and brings things into form that we couldn't even have imagined. There's this wonderful article I read a while ago by Dr. Jeffrey Rediger. And he is an instructor at psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. He's a medical doctor, and he's got a master's degree in divinity from Princeton Theological Seminary. And he said, when you have, as a result of his experience and as a result of his research, he said, when you have a heavenly experience, right? When you come to the knowing of God, when you have that spiritual, transcendent, miraculous experience, your outer body changes to match your inner body. Isn't that cool? So what he's saying is in agreement with the sovereign model of human consciousness, that when something attunes inside here, which so often happens at rock bottom, when we say, okay, I am no longer masterful. I'm no longer the masterful co-creator of my life. I am an utter failure. I give up. And the moment we do that, we allow that heavenly experience to permeate our consciousness, which means our outer body changes to match our inner body. Now, in the work that we've been doing over the years, we have seen multiple spontaneous remissions. We've seen miraculous healings. We've seen diseases that cannot be overcome. We've seen people with chronic anxiety suddenly have peace. We've seen debt being repaid because we've helped people, we've helped our students and our clients with the mechanism of allowing, with a mechanism of surrender. Now, we're not actually doing miracle work. You can't do miracle work because a miracle is mysterious and quantum, but you can do the work that goes into allowing these things to come to form. So most of the time, even though we're declaring ourselves available for miracle, yes, send me a miracle, Lord, I'm up for it. Most of the time, we're also declaring what that miracle ought to look like. We're saying, we want a miracle, and I want that miracle to be, I want $100,000 to land on my doorstep. Right? This is language my husband and I have often used because we've often asked for the $100,000 to land on our doorstep. And I'm going to tell you what happened. But what we so often do is we say, yes, I am available. I want that miracle. And the miracle needs to conform to the parameters of my consciousness. I want the miracle to look like this. Now, in doing so, we're reclaiming creative control, and you may still see this thing come to pass, but you must be in vibrational accord with it. Do you understand that? So if you're saying, I want a miracle and the miracle must look like this, you need to be in vibrational accord with that. But what we're talking about with the God drop is the sort of miracle where you don't need to be in vibrational accord. You don't have to attune yourself to something that you don't know what is. You can't be in vibrational accord with something that doesn't exist. You simply can't. You can try and imagine, well, maybe I'll be free. Maybe I'm, someone who has received this miracle perhaps wears red headscarves. So I'll start wearing a red headscarf so I can be in vibrational accord with it. All of that is outlining, and that's not being available to the impossible, right? I'm going to tell you about the client I sat with today. I had such a good session this morning. Thank you for the opportunity. But the client I sat with today, she came to me 2 weeks ago with chronic anxiety. It was terrible anxiety. She had this, she would wake up in doom and despair. She couldn't drive because she could, there might be an accident. She couldn't go for a walk in the sand because there might be needles in the sand. She couldn't, she would have these rising panic attacks. She'd seen therapists for many, many years, and she had all of the mindfulness techniques. She was a Reiki master, So in other words, there was nothing that she could get out there in the physical world. There's no more training that she could accomplish. There was nothing she could do. It really would take a miracle to overcome this anxiety, to get over this constant sense of impending doom. Well, it didn't take us long. In fact, it took us less than that whole session, about 45 minutes. It took us to discover that there was a trauma code in her consciousness preventing her from receiving the miracle. And let me tell you what it is. The trauma code that she had in her consciousness was resulting from about 50 years ago. She grew up in a really beautiful and religious and fortuitous and happy spiritual family until a terrible disaster happened aged 12 and she lost her father. And after that, all religious activity stopped. They stopped spending time together in prayer. They stopped meditating. They stopped seeking community. And the subconscious logic wrote into her cellular consciousness that when a crisis happens, God leaves the building. Now, it wasn't conscious. This isn't something that she would have said that she agreed with, because it doesn't really make any sense. But it was subconscious. It was an impression. It was impressed into her cellular consciousness, so that when a trigger happens in her life, flick goes the switch and God leaves the building. What happens when God leaves the building of your temple? It flips the poles, essentially, and your compass is no longer attuned to true north. It becomes attuned to true south. You're no longer looking at truth. You're looking at falsehood. Everything becomes inverted. So in other words, any sign of a miracle, any sign of resolution or healing, she would condemn it because God has left the building. I want you to transpose this, and maybe this isn't verbatim exactly like what it is in your life, but there are some ways in which you are negating the possibility of miracle. And either it's because you have an idea that if the miracle hasn't come to form, that for some reason God as some separate deity out there is not showing you favor, or perhaps you haven't done enough to deserve it, or perhaps whatever it might be. This sort of idea of God as a deity that either grants or denies wishes is incredibly damaging to the entire miracle work, to the entire universe of miracle work. Or potentially there's something along the lines of what my client experienced today, or her background, which is this inversion result of having the idea that when crisis occurs, it's because God isn't present. So any sign of a miracle she would condemn, but here's the thing: you are healed by your faith, not by your mastery, but by your faith. Now, your faith doesn't have to be perfect. That's what you're working towards, right? That's your mastery practice, is to work into perfect faith, work into perfect embodied trust. But if you just, for now, have faith the size of a mustard seed, just the size of faith that's enough for you to fall to your knees and say, you do it from here, that's enough to make space for a miracle. Think of like a pinprick in the veil that lets a single strand of light through. That's enough. Do you have that much faith? Yes, you do. So keep your eyes trained on it. And when you hear this idea that if I need a miracle, it must be because God has left the building, when you hear that, keep your eyes trained on that pinprick beam of light, that tiny mustard seed of faith that you have, because that's going to blow things open. Now, after one session of vibrational ontology, when we dealt with this problem, we dealt with this code in her subconscious that says, when a crisis happens, God leaves the building. We isolated that trauma code, we found that trauma code, and we dissolved the trauma code. And today, this is why I had such a good session today, she reported a complete change, Now, this is a woman who had spent decades in chronic anxiety, decades in despair. She would wake up in doom. She would wake up going, oh no, it's another day. She would have that feeling. And since we did this work in one session, she reported a complete change. She said she's light, she's happy, she's excited. She was in the line at Publix getting some medicine for her dog, and the woman behind started snapping about it. And instead of being triggered by it, she turned around and blessed the woman. I mean, these are the tiny, tiny little things, tiny little attunements that really do. First of all, they elevate your game board. They elevate your great game board so that your miracle mindedness, your horizontal plane of miracle work is, much more in accord with divinity, but also it opens you up to the possibility. Look, now here's the sweet spot we're really interested in right here. We're really interested in this sweet spot of sovereign poise. Again, it doesn't really matter where you are on this line when we're talking about the God drop, because the God drop is always available to you. But right here, here's the sweet spot where your mindset and consciousness and prehension is open to allow creative possibility. Check this out. So the barn was not the only time my husband and I faced homelessness. Our house was at imminent risk for foreclosure. We had 3 years of back debt and we were completely unable to pay for it. We had 1 month until the eviction moratorium would expire and the house would go into foreclosure. The housing market was extremely hot, homes were selling fast. And if we had made agreement with what we saw in the world, if we'd made agreement with what appeared to be, if we'd said, oh no, this is the situation as it is, and in 1 month, the house is going to go on foreclosure because we're never going to be able to save up $100,000 in a month. And in that time, the house is going to go into foreclosure and the housing market is hot and we're going to lose that home. And then we're going to have to think of a solution. And hopefully maybe God will come up with a solution and maybe we'll, I don't know, live in a barn or something. Oh my word. If we had made agreement with what we saw in the world, there would be no hope. And our creative declaration would have been attuned on perpetuating the creation of what we're experiencing. But we know the formula. My husband and I know the formula. We're actually well practiced in it now. And the formula is perfect surrender. There is a metaphysical process that you can go, that you can practice to get really good at this surrender. But when you know this, you can surrender nanosecond by nanosecond. You can not refuse to let go of control until your knees hit the concrete bleeding. You can let go of control now and now and now. So we asked for the miracle. Now, admittedly, we put some limitations because we thought we needed to manifest the $100,000 to pay off that back debt, but that's not what happened. Check it out. Out of the blue, a letter came in the mail offering to pay off all our back debt. There were some conditions. In order for us to receive this miracle and to have all of our debt paid off, we were challenged to expand our minds, to expand our energies and expand our capacities. And we were given an impossible goal. We needed to make 6 times as much money as we had been making, and we needed to do it 3 months in a row. And that was to demonstrate our commitment to the expansion required to receive a miracle of the size in consciousness that we were asking for. It was an impossible goal. But if you ask me, the best goals are impossible, because if you can't accomplish a goal, you need help. And you can't accomplish an impossible goal. Well, guess what? We did it. We made, with seconds to spare, we made 6 times what we had done the month before. And you know what? We did it again the next month, and then the next. And not just the 3 months that as part of the condition to receive the miracle, we have ever since. Ever since we've been in financial expansion. And as of 2 weeks ago, $100,000 of debt completely paid off. Not by our mastery, but by miracle. And our home is secure. Now, miracle is a quantum phenomenon. So it is the possibility for miracle that makes it available to you. I mean, for a moment, dwell in the knowing that that impossible goal that you have in front of you, the impossible goal that you must receive a miracle for, or it will not come to fruition, is possible. It's the possibility for miracle that makes miracle available. Listen, if miracles are possible for you, then miracles are possible for you. This is why Jesus Christ matters to your relationship with miracle work. Because he's the one one who was perfectly embodied in the knowing that I am that I am. And he was perfectly embodied in the knowing of that. So when he says, if you have faith in me, if you have faith in me, in this, if you have faith in me, then any miracle can come true. Because Jesus Christ knows that you don't have perfect faith in yourself, and you don't know enough about quantum mechanics to have perfect faith in God's ability to deliver. So being inside the field of consciousness that is the one who did it first is absolutely crucial, because you're inside an energy field of mercy. Great. Okay, so thank you for joining me today. I'm going to wrap it up now, but first, a summary. I've shown you that while miracle-mindedness is a part of your mastery, and in fact, it's also part of your calling, it's part of your spiritual calling as a believer. So while miracle-mindedness is a part of your mastery, the mind-blowing spontaneous interventions are facilitated not by your mastery, but by your faith, by your knowing, even just a mustard seed worth, that the faith that I am giving it over to something greater. This is the miracle that responds not just to your masterful manifesting skills, right? Skills with a Z, but also that is available to you wherever you are on the scale of consciousness. This is an ascending scale of consciousness. Wherever you fall, however deep you fall into your despair, you're never outside of this vertical God drop. You're always in the presence of the quantum possibility for miracle. Now, I'm going to promise you that you can realign your coordinates of consciousness so that, number one, your miracle-mindedness is always in the presence of miracles, that you are attuned in prehension to receiving constant miracle. And also, you can realign your coordinates of consciousness so that you have installed a mindset principle that overrides all other creative limitations. And I'm also promising you that you can rearrange your coordinates of consciousness so that your energy field shifts into the energy field of Christ, into the body of Christ, so that you're surrounded by the vibration of immediate mercy, infinite grace, and the deep personal love of the beloved. In the Oasis tomorrow, we're going to go deeper into the actualizing mechanics involved in allowing radical quantum possibility to come to form. The Oasis, by the way, is our spa for the soul. It's a place where we meet weekly for high-level spiritual teachings on the metaphysics and energetics of spiritual law. And you are, of course, always welcome to reach out directly for spiritual direction, ascension coaching, or miracle work even. If there is something that you are calling for, then we can work together in very specific precision prayer, and that's miracle work. So thank you very much for joining. If you're on the live stream, I'm going to say goodbye to you. And if you're on the live call, we're going to take questions now. So give me just a second. Those of you on the call, thank you for the applause. And goodbye to our live streamers. Great.